This is WZRD Chicago 88.3 FM. And we have with us at WZRD Miss Jennifer C. King. She is the Executive Director of the Cook County Department of Human Rights and Ethics. Welcome, Jennifer.
Hi, thank you so much for having me here.
Oh, thank you. It seems as if your department has to cover a lot of ground. Tell us briefly about what the department has to oversee.
Sure. So the Department of Human Rights and Ethics at Cook County is two separate functions. Our ethics work, where we provide compliance and advice to our elected officials and staff and other stakeholders. And then it also is comprised of our Commission on Human Rights, where we work to protect individuals from discrimination and harassment within the county, and also enforce our labor laws to ensure that individuals who are working within Cook County have access to or receiving the appropriate wages and also the appropriate benefits associated with their labor.
Mm. So if people were to have a problem with their employer not paying them fairly, they could also come to your department?
As it relates to not receiving the appropriate minimum wage, Cook County sets a minimum wage for tipped and non-tipped workers. So if they feel as if they are not receiving that appropriate wage, they can file a complaint with us. And then additionally, kind of connected to that, their benefits. So if they're not receiving their paid time off that they're supposed to under the law, they can file a complaint with us.
And then what other labor conditions do you cover if there is a violation?
Sure. So aside from minimum wage, paid leave, we also enforce the county's living wage ordinance, and that relates to individuals who are working for contractors who are contracting with the county for work.
Okay. Only contracting with the county. If they were independent contractors for an employer who is not Cook County, then they would not be able to come to your department to file a complaint.
That is correct. They're not covered in that way. Living wage particularly relates to those employees working for contractors with the county.
Got it. And what kind of contractors are they? Are they construction contractors? How wide and far? How many industries? How many different industries do contractors work for at Cook County?
It's pretty varied. It just depends on the work. It can include construction. It also may include vendors who are maybe doing work otherwise, like whether we're having some sort of, I'm trying to think of something that's not construction, as the county contracts for a lot of different things, but additionally, like employees who work for contractors who are maybe doing something with our technical infrastructure related to technology, it could kind of run the gambit.
Even like with the food handling too, right? Like for the cafeterias, or even maybe with the other maintenance workers too.
It could, if they are, employees who are working for contracting. We do contract out, or the county does, those sorts of services.
Okay. So for human rights, for the human rights side, is if people were to have their human rights taken advantage of, and they wanted to complain, does it have to be connected with Cook County, or let's say if they have some people are violating their human rights, are they able to come to your department?
Yes, so the Human Rights Commission it's public facing. So if an individual is experiencing harassment or discrimination in their workplace, if they're trying to access housing, public accommodations, et cetera, then they can file a complaint with us if they believe that they face discrimination, and particularly in violation of any of the protections that we enforce.
And could you give us maybe 3 examples of the protections that you would enforce?
Sure. So one is our what we refer to as our Just Housing Amendment. So it protects individuals from discrimination in housing based on their involvement with the criminal justice system. So essentially, a landlord cannot automatically reject an individual's application for housing if they have been arrested or have a conviction for a particular crime. So those individuals can come to us. Another example is facing discrimination in the employment context. So if an individual believes that they've been discriminated in the way that they have not received a promotion based on their membership in a protected class, race, gender, pregnancy status, they can file a complaint with us. And third, I would say we also have like Cook County facilities. So individuals who feel that they have been denied access to a particular county service. So I've been unable to get this particular service at this county office, and I believe that it was related to my age or housing status or something of that nature.
Mhm. Recently, there was a case in which a young man wanted to apply for a job, and then he didn't get it. It was I can't remember if it was in Illinois or not. I think it was. And then he had to change his name into he is an African American man, and then he changed it to a Polish sounding name, and he got the interview right away. So would that kind of situation also apply to uh if let's say if he lives in Illinois, could he file a complaint with your department as well?
Certainly. So, and I do remember that case. I think it was out of Detroit, perhaps.
Oh yeah, Michigan. Right, right, right.
Yeah. Yeah. So if that individual, he's, alleging that he feels he was not, invited for an interview or ultimately not hired for a position based on his race. If he is working within the bound or attempting to work within the bound an employer in Cook County, he could file a complaint with us. That's certainly within the scope of the work that we do.
And what is your background? How did you come to be working in this position?
Sure. So I am a lawyer by trade. My background includes general civil litigation and policy writing and compliance at the federal level. So I kind of began my career initially with the U.S. Department of Agriculture's SNAP program, so supplemental nutrition assistance, ensuring that the millions of Americans who are eligible for food benefits can receive those. And then I transitioned to general civil litigation with the state's attorney's office. And I came to the department because it was at the time led by Siobhan Baker, who I worked with at the state's attorney's office, and talked to her a bit more about the vision that she had for the commission. And I was just really excited to come in and do some of that work and to see the impact of my work in a different way. I think you can automatically, we hear, it's unfortunate that people are experiencing discrimination or not receiving access to their appropriate wages for their labor. But we do hear some success stories from individuals who are like, I had this issue and now, I couldn't get housing and now I've been able to get it and the issue is resolved right away. So I think that's really fulfilling in a way.
Absolutely. It's you find discrimination everywhere. It's hard to get a grip on addressing everything.
For sure. For sure.
Speaking of compliance, let's say if someone's human rights were violated and the whoever violated it, they were found to be you know they did violate that person's human rights. So then, what is the enforcement? What are the penalties?
Sure. So I'll note that anytime a complaint is filed with us, those parties can either agree to enter settlement talks. So they may come to some agreement amongst themselves that may include monetary payments, some sort of action that is taken. So like in housing, for instance, an individual might agree that, okay, well, we'll find you a unit, or that employer or housing provider will do training. So I'll note that we can also send them to mediation. Our investigators also may negotiate, work as the facilitate a settlement between the two parties.
Almost like a mediator.
Yes. Yes, we either send them to formal mediation, or our investigators have in the past worked as more informal mediators to reach some sort of amicable resolution.
Mhm.
And then alternatively, if we find a violation and there is no hopes of the parties reaching an agreement, the commission can order penalties. So fines bleed between $500 to $1,000. They may also order some sort of action to be taken. And then there's a potential for the complainant to ask for attorney's fees if they are being represented by counsel.
Mhm. When people do complain, what is the first step? What happens initially?
Sure. So initially, an individual can file a complaint with us at any time. It should be within a particular time frame, which we can talk about later. But file a complaint with us. As soon as we receive the complaint, we will review it to ensure that it is filed within the correct jurisdiction, that it has the required information, the required criteria, which would include the complainant's name, the respondent's name, what they are alleging to have occurred, and then we will serve it on the respondent. So we will mail it or email it or use US mail to mail it to the respondent and give them an opportunity to provide a response. So they technically they get 30 days unless they request additional time. And from there, once we receive a response, our investigators may request additional information. They may conduct interviews of the two parties or all the parties and of the witnesses that may be involved to figure out if there's enough evidence there that supports the conclusion that it's likely that a violation occurred here.
Mm. There was this one case of one of our friends. She lives in Tinley Park in like a home in which she gets assistance, but it's not a nursing home. So I think she complained about something, and then it seems as if she's getting discriminated against. Her rent goes up, and then they're trying to say that she is not properly no papers. Her papers are not in order as a disabled person, as a person with disabilities, and then but they took her, initially to live in that building. So with all these problems, that it seems as if they're retaliating against her because she spoke up for others. Would this qualify as a violation of her human rights, and would that be under your department's purview?
Sure. So I can't say if it qualifies. I would need a little more information.
Mhm.
What I would say is that in that instance, an individual who feels that they've faced discrimination and retaliation, certainly for raising those issues to that individual, should file a complaint with us. And then it'll give an opportunity for our investigators to gain the information necessary to make it a determination as to whether discrimination has occurred and retaliation, if that's a factor as well.
Mhm. Do people know about what your department does? Hopefully, of course, this interview will get the word out. But how many complaints do you get on the average over the year? And then has the number increased over the years?
Yes. So I would say in 2023, we received 94 complaints, which is an increase, a 623% increase from 2020, where we had received 13 cases. That is certainly the result of, and you kind of hinted to that, letting people know that we're here. So in 2021, the department hired its first outreach and training coordinator who worked to, make people aware of the commission, the protections that we enforce, and that they can file a complaint in talking about that process. So we do see kind of steadily over the last few years around that amount of cases. And we are working to do more outreach so that people can be aware of us. We're working to provide more guidance materials and resources for individuals to understand the protections that we have. So that's certainly something that's in our on the horizon for the department as we continue to work to educate the public.
there is also a Chicago Commission on Human Relations. So does and then maybe some of the cases of those people that are in Chicago, and then of course anybody that lives in Chicago is also in Cook County. Uh, how would those people file complaints? Would they file with both Chicago and with Cook County? Or and then if so, do the two departments have any contact with each other, or each it goes about its own separate investigation?
So we do have some jurisdictional differences. So if an individual, the general rule is if the conduct has occurred within Cook County, you can file a complaint with us.
Mhm.
Unless the municipality that it occurred in has their own human rights ordinance or commission, which is
Mhm.
the case with Chicago.
Mhm.
So individuals who have faced discrimination within the boundaries of the city of Chicago should file there. There is an exception, and that's related to our Just Housing Amendment. So individuals who face discrimination in the housing context based on their involvement with the criminal justice system can file with us, as the Chicago does not currently have that protection.
Oh, because I have heard of uh for just housing, there are returning citizens that go out into the field to see if landlords are complying, and then if they find that they aren't, then they maybe they get a they get written up. But so uh do those agents work with you, or are they separate?
So
To
those are separate agents. So
Mhm.
typically we will either investigate complaints that we've received that have been filed with us.
Mhm.
We've also had conversations with our community partners who are engaged in this work to give them information and training about just housing, especially as they're working, kind of doing that on the ground work to ensure that everyone is complying. But generally, we do not have investigators go out into the field.
Mhm. Okay. And what if people want to complain about their elected officials, and if there's something that they believe that they're not being ethical about, how much evidence do they have to gather, or do they have to FOIA uh, information in order to build a case and then file a complaint with you?
Sure. So for our on our ethics side,
Mhm.
individuals who are filing complaints against Cook County elected officials or candidates for Cook County office or employees even can file that complaint with us. There's no kind of minimum threshold in terms of what evidence they need to gather. We will review it and collect the evidence that's necessary to make a determination if a violation has occurred.
Mm. And Cook County only covers the Cook County government. It doesn't cover any other of the municipalities that are within Cook County, and it doesn't cover Chicago, which has its own ethics board.
Right. So we only cover our Cook County Code of Ethics only applies to Cook County elected officials and not those of the other jurisdictions or even the elected officials for the municipalities within Cook County.
Not even them, right? They have their own.
They have their own, yes. Similar to
Oh,
Chicago, as you noted, they have their own board of ethics
mhm.
that those elected officials go to for advice or that particular body does investigations related to Chicago ethical matters.
And if they complain with their local municipality, and they do not get a satisfactory result, could they still appeal to you? Or if they are not able to resolve the issue at their local level, that's the end of end of story?
So that's not within the scope of the work of the Cook County Board of Ethics,
Mhm.
as
Mhm.
it's only related to our Cook County elected officials and staff and other stakeholders.
Mhm.
I'm not sure of the process of an individual who is seeking to appeal a decision at a municipality. If they came to us, we would probably do some research to provide them with some additional guidance on where to go.
Does Cook County have an inspector general? And if so, does your office work with the inspector general?
So we do have an inspector general, and we do have some overlapping jurisdiction as it relates to the ethics ordinance. We work with them within the bounds of the parameters of our authorizing ordinances, I would say. But we do have some jurisdiction there that overlaps as it relates to ethics.
Mhm. And are you able to tell us, like, for those 94 cases, did you say that they were in 2023, right? The 94?
Yes.
So what is the breakdown? What do those cases, like the majority of the cases, cover?
Sure. I don't have the specific breakdown in front of me, but the majority of the cases are housing and employment. So that housing number also includes that just housing piece related to the criminal justice involvement piece.
Mhm. And the housing is it, what about people that are that are not returning citizens, but do they face do they complain to you, and are those some of those cases theirs if they face housing discrimination?
Yes, so housing discrimination can look very different. So typically what we see is a source of income discrimination. So that discrimination based on an individual based on how they're paying their rent, typically in the form of a housing voucher. And sometimes that's, discriminatory advertisement saying no voucher accepted or no Section 8 accepted. Individuals may also complain to us if they feel that they face discrimination based on any of the protected classes. So I was denied housing or I received some sort of adverse housing action based on my race, gender, pregnancy status, etc.
Mhm. So in other words, if a person has a voucher or a Section 8 voucher, they are able to use it no matter where they want to go. It's not allowed for a landlord to say that those vouchers are not accepted.
That is absolutely correct. No one should be denied access to housing based on how they're paying for it, and particularly those individuals who hold housing vouchers.
Mhm. Employment, do people find discrimination in employment mostly the returning citizens, or is it with people with disabilities or other?
So we see kind of a number of cases in the employment context. Some will include discrimination based on race, age. During 2021, there were a number of matters related to the COVID-19 vaccination. So it kind of is a broader spectrum, and even sexual harassment is included in that number. So it just varies. We have not yet or recently seen any cases in the employment context related to those returning citizens.
Mhm. How were they discriminating people concerning COVID-19, that they were not vaccinated, or how did that happen?
At the time, which was recently appealed, the Cook County had the COVID-19 vaccination rights ordinance, which protected individuals or required that employers allow their employees to take their COVID vaccination during office time. What we saw was that there were not necessarily complaints under that ordinance, but individuals who requested a religious accommodation based on their religious practice to not take the COVID vaccine. So that's really the types of cases where we're seeing. So kind of employment related, but also kind of alleging that they've been denied an accommodation.
Mhm. How long does it usually take for cases to be investigated? Does it vary by the case, or is there some basic timeline?
So under our ordinance and procedural rules, our investigations, we have an 180-day period to complete our investigations. We can extend if there's a need to do so. It kind of varies. I would say the employment matters generally take the longest amount of time, as they just tend to be a little bit more complex than the other cases. So we are working, though, to figure out how we can kind of make our process a little more efficient and timely. And that way was we want to get people kind of a resolution as soon as possible. But those employment cases are just more involved, I would say.
Mm-hmm. For employment, if you investigate and you do find a violation, and you speak with the employer, if the employer is willing to adjust accordingly, do, do you let it go at that, and then does the employer still like get a fine?
So it depends. So generally, our first goal is for us to have compliance, right? So
Mhm.
employers to comply with the ordinance. And if there's an employer who is willing to make the corrective action, that's certainly the goal, and something we hope for in every case. We would probably go back to the employee also to ensure that, do you agree to settle the matter based on the promises or the commitments that are being made by the employer? And then it might be something that we would take to our Human Rights Commission to make a final determination as to whether they're fine with dismissing the matter based on the employer's commitment made,
Mhm.
or if there is a need in that instance to impose a fine.
Mhm. And the Human Rights Commission is separate from your department, right?
Yes, it's a body of 11 appointed individuals.
Are they like, so they're almost like a board, but they are a commission?
Yes, same, it's just different wording. But our commission, yeah, it's 11 volunteers. It's an 11 body board, which we currently have 7 members on, individuals who volunteer to support the work that we're doing, either by amplifying the work of the commission, and then certainly providing input on the resolution of the cases.
Mhm. Okay, input on the resolution of cases. So, if so they kind of study the resolution of the cases, and then they decide whether to put their stamp of approval on it, is what you're saying.
For some of the cases, so matters that where the investigation, so within our kind of process,
Uh-huh.
at the conclusion of an investigation, if the investigators found that there is enough evidence to support the conclusion that a violation likely occurred, that matter goes to administrative hearing, where the parties will have an opportunity to provide more information or testimony to an administrative law judge, who would then make a recommended finding and send it to the commission for their review and approval. So in that context, there are matters that come to them for review. But if it's a matter that is dismissed because we don't have jurisdiction or something of that note, we typically handle it at the department level.
So it might go to the courts, and then right, you said that in some cases it would go to the courts.
Well, the administrative law judge. So it's a similar proceeding, but not quite. So it's like a hearing essentially. So the parties have an opportunity, similar to in court, provide information and testimony.
Okay, so the administrative law judge is within your department, but a separate like a hearing room, but there's a judge presiding over that hearing room, is what you're saying.
Yes, we utilize Cook County's Department of Administrative Hearings. Their administrative law judges review those matters for us and then send back the resolution. So there is a kind of a distinction between the work that we're doing as staff,
Mhm.
and then this kind of like separate entity that's doing an additional review of the work and providing a recommendation.
Okay, so in other words, you're saying that whatever findings you have, and then the administrative law judge, they do a hearing and does just looks everything over to see if the finding is in order, and they uh, give their stamp of approval.
Yeah, they may make a recommendation. So they can look at additional information if
Mhm.
the administrative law judge wants to see something additional. If those parties present some additional information as well, they'll be taken into consideration.
Mhm.
And that administrative law judge makes a recommendation of finding of a violation, imposition of fees, or fines or fees. And then that recommendation is reviewed by our Human Rights Commission.
Mhm. So there are almost like 2 levels of eyes checking to see if their case has been resolved fairly.
Yes.
What about appeals? If one of the parties is not satisfied, is there any way for them to appeal?
Sure. So if a party wants the commission, let's say in the example we've given, where it
Mhm.
goes to administrative law judge, it then comes to the commission agrees and imposes a fine and finds a violation against the respondent. If that respondent is not happy, or if the inverse happens and the complainant is not happy, they can file a request for reconsideration to the commission. It has to fit within particular criteria. So alleging the law was misapplied, there's new information that wasn't taken into consideration at the time that's relevant, and there's one other kind of bucket of claims that they can make. That's reviewed by the commission. If the commission decides like we're denying your request for reconsideration and still maintaining our order, they could then seek review of that order in court and filing a review there.
In actual court, you mean?
In actual court, yes.
Does that ever happen?
There was, I believe, one instance recently of a respondent filing in court to challenge one of the decisions of the commission.
Oh, well, that's not very many. Just one out of about the 94 plus 30 something.
There may have been more before, but only one that I'm aware of currently.
Well, Jennifer C. King, thank you so much for joining us on WZRD Chicago 88.3 FM, and you are the Executive Director of the Cook County, the Department of Human Rights and Ethics. If our listeners want to learn more about your department, where should they go?
Sure. If they want to learn more about us, they can, they can email us directly, particularly for human rights, human.rights@cookcountyil.gov, or they can go to our website and review information. I want to make sure that I give the correct web address, but also searching Cook County's Human Rights Commission will get them to the webpage. And we have a number of resources available on there, including our Navigating the Commission Guide, which provides some information for individuals about like how to file, some best practices, and just navigating the commission if they do have a matter before us. And if they ever have any questions, even if it isn't to file a complaint, but just want to know more about what's my right within this context, they can always contact us for that.
Okay, so the department is working as part of the commission, or is the commission part of the department? I'm kind of confused.
Sure. So the department is essentially the staff for the commission.
Okay.
I would say that's an easier way to describe it, hopefully.
Okay, it's the staff for the commission.
Essentially, yeah.
Okay. And could you give us the email one more time?
Sure. It's human.rights@cookcountyil.gov.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jennifer C. King, for joining us on Wizard today.
Great. Thank you so much for having me. Have a good one.
You too. Very valuable information. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.